This is Collab or Collapse, a podcast series brought to you by the Postgraduate Research Society, Swinburne Sarawak.
In today's episode of Student-Supervisor Dynamics in Postgrad Life, we're talking about one of the most defining parts of the research journey, the student-supervisor relationship. From making the right choice to navigating different working styles, we'll explore how to build a strong and balanced partnership. Joining us here today, we have Professor Ida Fatimawati binti Adi Badiozaman, who is also the Deputy Pro Vice-Chancellor of Research here at Swinburne Sarawak.
Welcome back, everyone. In our last episode, we've tackled some of the biggest myths about postgraduate studies. So today, we are diving into the trickiest and most relatable part of the journey, the student-supervisor relationship. If you have ever questioned whether you have chose the right supervisor or wonder what to do when the relationship with your supervisor gets tough, then this episode is definitely for you.
Now, joining us here today, we have Professor Ida. Now, as the Deputy Pro Vice-Chancellor here at Swinburne Sarawak, she's been involved in the project connecting the government, industry, and education, always aiming for a real impact. Now, beyond her leadership role, she began her journey as an educator and continues to supervise students today. Now, with that mix of experience, it gives her such a unique view on our topic today, which is the students and supervisors relationship. And we're really excited to have her with us today.
So thank you again, Prof. Ida, for joining us here today. We have all heard stories from postgrad students about their relationship with their supervisors, but not all of them are positive. So it really makes you think because at the beginning, the students do meet their potential supervisors, but with just one or two meetings, it's almost impossible to know whether this person is the right fit for the entire journey. So how can students actually make the right choice with such a limited first impression?
This is very true. It is very hard to make that first impression as an assessment of whether this is a match for you. So what I always tell potential students, or based on my own experience, is do your research. So as with your own projects, what you have to do in order to identify whether this will be the right supervisor for you, there are several things I would recommend that you research on. Number one is, of course, the academic prestige. Who is this person that you're about to encounter a 4-5 year relationship with, right? So you have to know about them in terms of their academic prestige. And what I mean by this is, what kind of area they work for, what kind of publications have they produced in the recent years, and also anything else that could tell you whether this person has been quite active in several areas that you intend to be part of. So with this, you have a certain idea as to whether you are able to work with the person, whether your fields or topic will match. So in addition to that, other than doing that research, also have first-hand knowledge by talking to other students that they have supervised, so they're seniors in that sense. So talk to them informally as to what was their experience like, what was this person's supervision style, because there are some who feel that students are some that need only minor guidance, so you handhold for a bit and then let go. And there are some who will manage you like weekly meeting minutes, agenda. You all must prepare that. So you need to understand that part as a supervision style. So additionally, what I find works as well is to have several conversations with them. So it can be formal, it can be informal at a cafe, for example, just so that you know what kind of personality, what kind of attitude, what kind of character this potential supervisor has. So in that sense, when you do that, you have a feeling whether, yes, green flag or red flag, right? Okay. So again, like what I tell all my students very similarly, that one meeting will not mean that it's a perfect match. So the journey of PhD is like a roller coaster. So there are highs and lows. So the key thing is to see whether this person is able to communicate and you are seen as an equal partner in this PhD journey. So that is something that is critical in order to find the right supervision. So this applies for PS and also CS. So you really need to do your homework, do your research in order to understand, okay, yeah, this will work for me, or maybe not. I'll find another person. And good supervisors will always have that, give you that opportunity in a sense. Okay, she's just checking me out. It might not work out and I'm okay with that. But there are some who feel that, okay, you are talking to me, you are obligated to me. So there are situations that are like that, but you have to make it clear from the get-go. So that's why communication, very first one, is key in order to get the right message and that you are on the same page about the supervision.
Right. Thank you, Prof. Ida. And I really like the point that you actually mentioned about we also need to do research, not just on the supervisor's academic background, expertise, but also on his or her personality as well. Because I think compatibility is key and is as important as expertise as well. So, and I think that leads us nicely for the next question, right, Ellie?
Yes. So, same reiterate from the first impression that it's a green flag, it says. Now, once I've chosen this supervisor, this second question is how do a student sees them? Because we heard a lot of students sees their supervisors differently. So some see it as boss, some sees it as a mentor, they still call them teacher, and then some even can work together like a collaborator. And how these students sees them really shape how the relationship would work. So from your perspective, what role should actually a supervisors play? And also as importantly, what role should the student play to keep this partnership healthy in a long run?
Yeah. So the key word here is partnership, as mentioned, right? And as a supervisor, I've done this for many years. I think there is no one specific hat that I wear. Again, this is also because of the role that I have in the university. So again, having that perspective, multiple lenses as a supervisor, and also being, the leader in the RMC, in the Research Management Center, I always believe that it is a partnership. So in certain cases, yes, I have to be the boss. I have to tell you, these are the things that are your responsibility. These are the milestones that you have to achieve, right? By such and such for your DTR, MCR, and so on. So in some cases where there are situations that perhaps the students might need more mentoring, because the whole process is a training process, right? So if I always tell you what to do without providing that platform or opportunity for students to grow, it will not help or benefit the student. So that's why the partnership is there. So sometimes I wear that mentor hat, sometimes I have to be the boss, and sometimes I am your friend when you do have issues or challenges. And I can relate because I've gone through that process, and I also see from my lens as your supervisor or as the RMC. So in cases where students feel that my deadlines are coming and I can't commit, so there's always support that we can provide in the RMC as well. So that's why it's very hard to box it into just one hat or two hats. Along the journey, it will be many, many hats. And what I aim as a supervisor, okay, maybe I will start as your boss or mentor, but eventually as you graduate, you have put your bonnet on when you are on that stage. You are now my equal. Right? So the goal for any good supervisors is to create more professors, more academics, and more intellects. So if you have that kind of perspective going in a supervision team, you will know that you will have to be flexible. Certain times, yes, you might have to be a mother in my case where I have, younger students who have not experienced, or with very mature students who want me to back off a bit, who are working adults. So I have to be very aware. So that self-awareness is also important.
Yeah, I think that brings a very important message here is the self-awareness. Because they will always think that the supervisors plays on a role, but then you should also understand, as a student, you should understand also the way you work and then communicate to the supervisors and see how things would work out.
Yeah. So, but of course, there are times when the working style between the student and also the supervisor just doesn't work. So, for example, some, like what you mentioned just now as well, some supervisors might be very hands-off, but some will be a little bit too involved. So, when the style doesn't quite match, what can the students do to still adapt and also make the relationship work?
Yes, relationships are hard. So I always believe that these mismatches are common. It's impossible to have everything perfect. For 4, 5, 6 years, everything is roses, rainbows, and unicorns. It doesn't happen. So first thing to accept is common and is natural. Okay, it is to be expected. But how do we mitigate this? How do we navigate this? Is communication. So sometimes, the frustration is there. I know some students are frustrated. In my case, like if I am quite occupied and I have other commitments and they really desperately need to see me, it is frustrating. But to keep it in silence, that's actually worse. So I always tell that, okay, I am going to be away such and such dates. I always clarify. So communication is key. And then while I'm away, your CS or your AS is around. So please communicate with them. But before I go, can we just follow up on such and such things? So communication is one. And I always make sure that it's two ways. It's not just me telling them. And I always check, okay, if it's really urgent, tell me, call me, WhatsApp me. I'm okay with that. But not all supervisors will have that style. So that's why I say early on, you have to know what works. For me, I'm okay if they WhatsApp me because I know if WhatsApp, that means it's urgent or they really need something. And at the end of the day, I feel if it doesn't work out, you've tried communicating, you've tried to be in the supervisor's shoes and, oh, okay, she has teaching or she has this commitment or she's tied up for a few months. So you have had that empathy, you're trying to be sympathetic, but it also doesn't work out. And as I mentioned, there is always support from the RMC. So you can talk to somebody. And that's why I said the PS is important, but CS and AS also play a big role when the PS is not available. So having that good combo, that good chemistry is one way to mitigate all this. But always, always, always communication. So you can communicate verbally as this way, but some are comfortable with emails, some are comfortable in any other means. Perhaps I just discovered Discord. I didn't know what that was until most recently. So if that works for that student, I'm okay to accommodate that. Because for me, when I take on that responsibility as a supervisor, it's an honor. It's a huge obligation. Therefore, I have responsibilities to 7, 8, 9 students of mine. So if somebody feels that, Prof. Ida, I think I'm having an issue, I don't know how to manage this, can I have a chat with you, maybe 5 minutes? I will spare my time for that because to communicate something like that to me means there is something that I need to solve together with the student and the rest of the supervision team.
Okay, so let's say there's some point you make a discussion that there will be a disagreement. And then it could be during a discussion or a decision making for research, the direction, and all of that. And there, this comes with a really tricky part is that some students will feel like they don't have the right to say no. And some, you will see them, they push back strongly and come across as defensive. So it makes us ask, is the supervisors is always right? And when you do disagree, how do you find the balance in between keeping quiet and pushing back in a healthy way?
Yeah, okay, that's always a tricky one. What I want to emphasize is this whole PhD journey, this research journey that you are taking on. It's not a straightforward linear process. There's always discussions ongoing. There's always problems to solve. And having these discussions or debates actually is very, very healthy. So it is to be expected. I would worry if everything is smooth sailing and my student would say, yes, okay, I agree, I will do. I would want some sort of debate. I want some sort of feedback to make sure that, yes, this student that I am supervising is actually growing along the journey. Of course, I will not be I will be providing the opportunity for them to, give their feedback, give perspective, but it's always evidence-based. We're all researchers here. So if you say A, there must be a reason why you're saying A is right. So I will want to hear that perspective. So having that healthy debate is what I actually want in that supervision process. So to say that they are always right, I would disagree. Because there's so many things coming up every day in terms of research, in terms of technology. There may be things that I'm not aware of. So if you come back with me, evidence-based, you show me the data, it's credible, reliable, I'm happy to hear that. So it should be that way. It should be where all perspectives are heard. So I don't think, supervisors are always right. I would say most of the time, yes, if they're the expertise, if it is something they have evidence about, and it's something that they are really prolific in terms of the discipline. But no harm in hearing why students say or feel a certain way. You have to be open to that. Yeah. Unless it's cost, then there are reasons for budget and things like that. So they must feel a certain way, then we have to hear that part. Yeah.
So do you have any things to tell the students that, because some students really think that they wouldn't want to, they would think that this debate would be a fight back. So how would you encourage them to take approach to have a discussion?
Again, as I mentioned, the whole PhD process is a journey. It's a training process, okay? So once you're out there, once you graduate, you'll deal with many, many more people who are like this in industry, your other colleagues, So this whole process is a training in terms of how you debate professionally, respectfully to people who see things very differently, who might just, in a certain setting, just cut you off. Yeah, without you finishing your point, because you're not loud enough or because you're taking too long to get your message through. So you have to figure out how. This is the platform where you learn to speak and convey your message and be justified in why you're saying a certain, why you're saying certain things and why you believe in certain things. So yeah, just be professional, be respectful, and try to have some empathy or understanding as to why this person is the way they are the way they are, and come from your perspective explaining, I see your point, but this is how I see things. Just that evidence-based, respectfully, and
So that's a very good advice to the students. Treat this PhD, this postgraduate journey as a learning curve, that it gives you a platform to actually grow and be prepared for the industry life.
Yeah, and I really like the point that you mentioned just now. A healthy debate actually helps the students to grow. And we, as a student, we also need to learn how we can convey our message in a clear and respectful manner. But say, for example, me as a student, I already know how I can do that. Just convey the message carefully. But there might be cases where when the students try to communicate, but the supervisor just doesn't listen. Basically, it's like we try to communicate, but it just doesn't work. So what can a student do in that kind of situation?
And the beauty with communication is there are many channels, many paths. So if you speaking to them face to face did not work, perhaps follow it up with an email saying, in this discussion, I valued your feedback, your input into this discussion. However, I still feel A, B, C, D because C, E, F, and so on, with all your evidence base, your data, and so on. So follow up with that and see how they reciprocate. But if they go silent, don't give up. I mean, keep going, and then trying to see what platforms or what channels would actually get your message through. Sometimes it's also talking to other person that works with this supervisor to get that message through, or a colleague. So I have had situations where I feel like I'm just not getting through to this person, just as, doesn't want to hear it. So if this person is committed to misunderstanding you, you have to also reach to that point and say, okay, it's not going to budge. So you have to accept that point. But before that, make several attempts via many communication platforms or paths to get your message across. So that's why I say for students, right? If let's say you want to convey a point, but was cut off or was not able to, document your meetings, summarize the minutes and cover it up. Also, cover it in terms of documenting monthly meetings with supervisor. This was covered, this was not solved, and so on. This, when everything is in black and white, so that means that you've done your part in that sense. If it goes to a point where it's beyond repair, you have all that documented to say that, look, I've tried, but nothing is getting through. So that's where you go seek an extra support from RMC, saying, I've tried this, what can I do now? So that's where the RMC then steps in.
So I think that's also an advice to students. Maybe there must be a hard time where we find that the supervisors wouldn't listen, and it feels like you have did everything you can to do the communication. But also there's one way to do that is to document it, to have some evidence on it, and then just to prepare that's in one day when there's a right time and the communications can continue again, there's something that you can bring out and have a very good communication after that.
I think one point that I want to also make is we also have to understand our supervisors. That's why the very first part is to know them, what they do, what the role is. They may be going through something. They may be having a workload that's quite demanding at the moment, doing semester or assessment. So maybe the timing is not quite right as well. So there are other factors. That's why I said that the empathy part also plays a role. So student needs to play a role, supervisor needs to play a role.
And yes, sometimes students will feel like I understand you, but sometimes the supervisor would just think that this student is just too sensitive, that maybe they just need some care. What's your thought on that?
Again, humans are complex, so there's no one-size-fits-all supervision style. I mean, I have had many over the years, and I will not use the same for all my students. So I have to modify, adapt along the way. And it's a learning process for both of us throughout the journey, so the supervisor and the students. So let's say in that particular context, I have had cases, I will not say names, where students felt like, okay, cannot get through Prof. Ida, but go to the CS. And then the CS was able to work it out with the students, right? So I backed off a bit, and then eventually it was sorted out, and then we became a happy family again, months later. But yeah, it takes a certain skill set, I would say, for the students, and to also navigate all this with the CS and the PS. So it's a learning process. I wish I can say there's a magic wand and say everything perfect, but it's not. Sometimes it will happen, but it doesn't mean that it stops your PhD process. You need to ensure that your goal is still achieved. So if something is deterring you from getting to the next milestone or to your MCR, your DTL, then if this doesn't work, go to where support is provided.
The alternative is to go with the co-supervisors, because some point we're just into discussion with our PS, and then we forget that the co-supervisor actually plays a role in your team also. Yes. So far we've been talking about all the struggles and the conflicts, but what about the other extreme? Because there's also students that have really good relationship with their supervisors, and that sounds really good, but can being too close actually creates different challenges.
Okay. I'm sure it will, because when boundaries are blurred, when the boundaries between student supervisor are blurred, and it evolves into something else, I don't know what, it could make the supervisor perhaps a bit more lenient to the student, or the student becomes over dependent. It can morph into a lot of things. So again, goes back to the individual, the goals, supervisor goals, student goals, whether that's aligned or not. So in cases where I have seen that experience, the mentorship evolves into several other projects that benefit other students, other successes. I think that's a good thing. I really enjoy watching that growth. See, from the student who is now, leading projects in industry. I mean, that's what we aim as supervisors. But in cases where the boundaries are blurred and, perhaps it becomes a friendship, so supervisor takes off that supervisor hat a bit more lenient, then you're actually sabotaging the student from the actual goals. So that's not good. So this is why one thing for us, what we do in RMC, we always provide that supervisor training. There's one happening this week actually, just to remind themselves, these are the things you have to do, these are the checklists, and these are the things to look out for when you're supervising students. And we always tell them, it's a process, but it doesn't mean that we are not providing resources. So there's training provided, and if things go awry, there are support provided as well in terms of counseling or RMC to step in if things don't go well. So yeah, it's a tricky one, because for us, I won't talk for us. For me, as a supervisor, I really want my student to excel. So I believe it is also my responsibility to look out for opportunities where they can thrive. So if there is a postdoc opportunity, if there is a job opportunity, if there's a project I feel or a grant relevant to that topic, I will let them know, but still maintain that professionalism. I will not cross that line. And again, it's only because I want them to do well. So for someone who can vouch for you when doors are closed, I say, oh, I think Adeline might be good for that, I'll tell you, go apply for that grant. So that kind of thing is good, because sometimes we are so focused in our study, but after that we know there's other things that we might want to venture, but you might not be thinking about it, but your professor will nudge you first. We should do this, we should do that. You might think about this, or what about this? So that's the kind of thing that I rather focus on, rather than, blurring that kind of boundaries. Yeah.
It's because I've actually talked about this with my supervisors, because we do have a really good relationship, and I asked him whether he sees challenges in it. And what he says that the efficiency, because there's times that we get it too close, different from what those that's more demanding, the efficiency would be low in doing works. So it's actually a double-edged sword here. And then there's also need to have a very clear line whether what you should do, even you have a really good relationship with the supervisors.
Yeah. So that's why in that very first conversation that you had when you approached somebody to be your supervisor, the expectations must be clear. So what do you expect from me? What do I expect of you? What needs to be set clear from the get-go, so you don't cross that line. So eventually it will evolve, yes, but as long as you maintain that clarity on goals and expectations, you should be able to mitigate that somehow. It's very normal, again, to lose track of, okay, we're now evolved into a very good friendship, a very good relationship, but should not deter you or hinder you from that growth, though. So a good supervisor will always know that, okay, this is my duty. I need to provide this kind of platform. I need to provide this kind of guidance. And if in a situation where it's not working out or it's no longer beneficial for both, a good supervisor would need to be okay when students say, actually, I want to change supervisor. And that conversation has happened. It's very normal. And students feel so scared. I'm so scared to change supervisor. How will they, how will they feel? But you should focus on how would they impact your own progress. That's priority. So what's priority? What's expectations? So yeah. And it's normal. It happens all the time. Yeah.
So I think a supervisor-student relationship is never perfect from the start. And it's actually a learning curve for not just the supervisor and also the student to know how we can be clear on our boundaries. And also for students, why we need to know who should we approach if we need help and if your relationship with your principal supervisor just doesn't work. So yeah, basically it's a learning curve for both. And yeah, it's something that you grow into, adapt to, and also figure out along the way.
Right.
It's not something that you can know at the first start. So before we wrap up, Prof. Ida, what's one piece of advice you would like to leave with students as they navigate through the journey?
One piece of advice, gosh. Maybe for some student that's at the stage of burnout and they just because they didn't know what to do.
Okay. My advice for the students, if I reflect back on my journey, right? When I did my PhD many, many years ago, I did it and I got pregnant. So I would not advise that. That was very challenging for many reasons. I think setting your expectations and managing it is important because that will also mean that you are self-aware and then you know that your goals, in order to reach that, you have to manage your supervisor. It's a skill set. So this relationship, right, or this whole journey is, like you said, it's not going to be perfect from the start. It's something that evolves. And you also, please remember, will evolve as a person throughout these 3-4 years. So that is one thing that I want the students to be aware of. And it's okay to change. It's okay to evolve because that means growth. Growth not just as a person. This whole journey is growing you as a researcher. So that is my advice. So sometimes, it will be very hard. It will be challenging. But know there is support around you. So what my advice would be, in addition to knowing your goals and having clarity on that, is knowing the resources there. Resources can come from in the form of a good supervisor or a good supervision team, or also the support of your tribe. Who are your tribe? Your PGRS tribe, or your it could be your friends, it could be anyone that is building you up. So in case things go bad, you have them to support you in that sense. So that would be my advice, because it's so easy to feel alone and isolated throughout this process.
I think that is a good reminder to everyone who's listening to this episode as well. If it ever feels too heavy, just remember you are not on your own. There are always people at the back to actually support you. You just need to know who are the supporting roles that you can reach out to when it's really hard. And your research matters, so do you.
So thank you again, Prof. Ida, for sharing your insight with us today. And to our listener, thank you for joining on our episode. And if you enjoyed the discussion today, don't forget to follow, share, and also stay tuned for more episodes. Until next time, take care.